one of the biggest things happening right now is Republicans are scrambling. They're freaking out because of this Alabama Supreme Court decision that ruled that embryos in, that are frozen could be considered children, people, and that anyone who mishandles them could be liable for murder, effectively, and or I guess wrongful death of a minor. So just like, yeah, child killing, cool. Because of course, and Moji, before we dig into maybe this case, the idea that the anti-choice movement would go for IVF and fertilized embryos or fertilized eggs was kind of always like on the back burner, like maybe they will, I don't know. And then it was always pointed out, I remember pointing it out. It was like, oh, are they going to come for embryos? And then I think folks who are more in it, like yourself, were like, yeah, no,
absolutely,
they
on the
will.
list.
So tell us about kind of the origin, like that. Did this surprise you? I guess is what I'm saying.
I mean, it's sort of like the Dobbs decision, which, which is what basically overturned Roe. It hurt when it happened, but is it surprising for anyone who's paying attention? Absolutely not. This is in fact fully part of the playbook. So this, still reading it, where it's like, oh wait, Alabama has decided that extrauterine embryos are children, makes no sense. But it really is. This is not about children, because that's not a child, right? If Alabama actually cared about children, they would have probably more robust paternity care. They would have a whole lot of other supports that would actually make children live better lives in Alabama. But this is about control. And this is also about establishing that fetuses or extrauterine fetuses, or basically anything that may have a sperm and an egg come together and call itself something, is a person, and therefore it's one of the steps necessary to essentially outlaw any form of abortion. So
Right.
I don't know even so much if it's about IVF per se, but it definitely is about control, and it definitely all boils back to making sure that we understand that the fetus's rights are far superior of any person who can get pregnant.
Right. Absolutely. And the case that brought this on, from my understanding, is that someone mishandled some embryos. They dropped, were destroyed, and the parents of those embryos were pissed and sued for it. And I guess under the wrongful death of a minor, which now seems like they're trying to walk back. Like they're like, this isn't about, broader, whether or not this embryo is a person. This is just, we just want to be, be made whole by this obvious mistake. But the Supreme Court was like, no, that's a kid. And in response, Alabama's now shut down, I guess, 3 IVF clinics or facilities. I say clinics as if they're still abortion clinics operating in Alabama. But yeah, do you know, or can you tell us at all about the state of reproductive rights in Alabama? I mean, I'm assuming we're at a 6-week ban, complete ban.
Oh no, they're not at 6 weeks. They're a full total ban. There's a full total ban in Alabama. I was trying to figure out what their exceptions are. I would hope there's a life of the mother, but we haven't seen the lines of Texas women who have not been able to have miscarriage management come from Alabama. And that's probably just a little bit more research I need to do, but it's a full total ban. Yeah. Also,
which 6 weeks is also a full ban. I mean,
6 weeks is a full ban, pretty much.
Yeah.
You can slip by that if you're really diligent, but most people, it's a full week. It's a full ban.
Right.
But Alabama also criminalizes pregnant people or miscarrying people at a rate more than double anyone else in the country. So Alabama is really all about fetuses and less about people who carry children, right? That's not anything that they arrest people. They put people in jail if they feel like they're using drugs while pregnant. This is a thing about Alabama. They really do fetishize fetuses there. And so this is, again, not surprising. And this is, again, about control and not really about a child, I feel like I keep repeating the same things, but it's no, it's terrible in Alabama. It's not a good place. And I also, a colleague said this earlier today. She was like, has anyone checked in on these families, right? Who just wanted to be made whole and are now looking up oh, the mechanism that we wanted to use to extend our families is now possibly not available to us and other families like us who can't access this care in this state.
Right. Yeah. From what I saw, they're like, we did not mean this to spin, get this out of control. But I guess too late, and maybe we were already headed here once you enshrine the rights of the unborn or whatever into everything. The Alabama AG says they're not going to prosecute IVF families or providers, but that doesn't really mean anything because another AG could come along and be even more psychotic and be like, no, we are going to prosecute. And the reason you would prosecute them is because people who have embryos frozen, at some point, you just like dispose of those embryos because you don't want any more kids or you were unable to get pregnant via IVF or whatever happens. In this case, what I've seen is that possibly you'd have to be paying for the freezing of those embryos in perpetuity if you didn't want to be charged with murder.
Yes. Yes. And also,
Which
I feel like
wild.
we don't even know what the statute, like, let's say even the current AG is like, oh, no, I don't want to, has said, I don't want to prosecute people. What's the statute of limitations, right?
Right.
Like, you might destroy an embryo now, and then 5-10 years down the line, some new person is like, no, that crime you did, we know what you did. Also, as long as rules like this, as long as rulings like this are on the books, none of us are safe, right? None of us are safe. It sort of opens the door for all kind of similar rulings or all other things that continue to chip away at our reproductive freedoms and our reproductive rights at our reproductive hopes.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Republicans are actually scrambling to fix this. They're like freaking out. I believe the Republican-led Senate is going to introduce something that like gives an exemption for IVF in Alabama explicitly. Nancy Mace and other representatives in the House are like swearing that they're going to protect IVF, even though they've all signed this Life at Conception Act, which has no carve outs for IVF. Now they're all freaking out. And a lot of them, including like Mike Pence and other Republicans, have like families thanks to IVF. Here's my question for you. And I kind of feel like, to me, we all understand that clamping down on reproductive rights is all about control of people's bodies. That's pretty much
100%.
it. And so the extrauterine embryo, if it's in a lab or it's in a freezer, it's like it's not fun anymore for Republicans because like it doesn't come along with like a uterus to, like control. You're just like, oh, no. We just want to control the person having the unwanted kid or having the wanted kid. We don't care about the facility. Like, don't you feel like this kind of gives up the ghost that they don't really care about the child? If a fertilized egg is a child, they don't really care, but they only care if it allows them to control people's bodies.
Oh, 100%. It's absolutely another mechanism to control people who give birth, right? Who care. But I don't know. I still think, and this is my personal opinion, that they still, like, this is still a big step in just enshrining that, like, a fetus is a person, right? That
Right.
a collection of cells is a person and that they are due all of the rights of a living child, right?
Yeah.
And we see this in other states. Like also, Alabama's just taking it the furthest. But
Yeah.
I think in Georgia right now, you can get child support or a tax credit, and maybe it's tax credit, not child support, if you're pregnant. Which again, that's
Wait.
not. Yeah, that's the thing.
Oh, okay. Because I'd be like, yo, if we get tax credits for like embryos, I would do it. Like, I'm Harvard, let's go. Like, that would, oh my God, that's like no crying, no swaddling diapers, the
just
money,
tax credits,
no college fund, just straight up tax credits for my embryos. These are my babies. I'll have them right here. I swear to God.
No, I think you do actually currently have to be pregnant, but they'll get around to it. Just to go back to the beginning of your question, though, I think a lot of it is that a lot of times, like, conservative politicians think like, oh, we're for life, we're for kids, but they don't necessarily think through like the actual ramifications of these promises or these policies that they back. They just like how it sounds like, oh, we're 100% for life. We're 100% for like children. We're here for the babies. But then kind of like even what is happening with the Dobbs decision, right? What they maybe did not think through or expect were pregnant people miscarrying outside of hospitals, right, with wanted pregnancies or not, or finding all of these new things. Like, I think they didn't think it through. It was like, this sounds great for a particular part of the base, but the logical conclusion of their thoughts, I don't know if they think that far.
I mean, Lance, please jump in. I mean, I'm sure I don't know how many eggs on ice you have. I don't know
Yeah,
how many
yeah.
kids in
Or how
waiting.
many times you've been pregnant, Lance? I'd love to hear about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna cis mansplain this whole topic.
I love it.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I think the really wild thing about this story is that wasn't there a politician who was being interviewed and they were asking him about IVF, and I think he thought it was something else. Like I don't know if he's like
Yeah,
life begins at flirtation kind of idea, but like
it was
I
Tommy
think he didn't know that.
Tuberville.
Okay, yes,
oh,
It
Tuberville.
was
always
Tommy
Tommy Tuberville.
Tuberville. He
That's
was like,
who it
"This is
was.
great," and he was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
maybe I haven't read it."
Yeah, and then like the question kept going, and they're like, well, what about women who are like trying to conceive? Like, this is to help people have birth. This is what this is your jam, right? Like, this is what you're supposed to be all about. Like, babies, sanctity of life, fetuses. And then all of a sudden, this comes along, like, oh, that's what this does. Oh, okay, yeah, that too. Yeah, it's all sin.
Yeah, Tommy Tuberville. That was the man who, remember, wasn't letting military promotions go forward because he wanted
Yes.
to stop service people who needed abortions from having any possibility of having abortion care.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Which
he's
is and
he's a peach.
And I think that's really interesting. It's also one of the reasons that like the right is now calling the military woke, right? Is because it's protecting the right for service members to get abortions, and just basic healthcare, which is basic healthcare. Maybe we could watch that. I don't know if I hope. Tell me if you guys can see and hear this.
Do you have a reaction to Alabama Supreme Court ruling on the fact that embryos are children?
Yeah, I was all for it. We need to have more kids. We need to have an opportunity to do that.
We need to have more kids.
Right thing to do, but
IVF is used to have more children, and right now IVF services are paused at some of the clinics in Alabama. Aren't you concerned that this could impact people who are trying to have kids?
well, that's for another conversation. People need to have. We need more kids. We need people to have the opportunity to have kids.
Senator, what do you say to the women right now in Alabama who no longer have access to IVF, or who will not, as a result of this ruling? What do you say to them?
Well, that's a hard one. It really is. It's really hard.
I swear to God, I think he thinks they meant IUD. I think that's what it was. Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Like, yeah, no, get rid of it. Promiscuous sex. And stuff. Like, no.
It's just like I support the IDF. You know what they need to do, and they need to go in there. You know, I support. They have the right to defend themselves. Absolutely. Oh my God. Yeah. So I mean, but like. Moji, you work on reproductive rights and abortion rights. This is par for the course when it comes to the same politicians making these laws. I'm sure he's a signatory to the right to where life begins at conception.
I'm sure.
He has no idea how reproductive systems work.
I mean, do you remember? It was I think a senator or governor. What's his name? Adkins, who said. He said a couple of really fun things, but one was like, "Oh no, if a woman is raped, the body has a way of just shutting that down, shutting that down." Which is like these people are making laws about a process that they don't even understand.